Okay, so this is, sorry about the difficulty with getting on tonight. This is the March 3rd budget review meeting. And I think that today we're going to be reviewing the mayor, chief of staff, corporation counsel, town clerk, registrar, voters, fire, police, and as well as purchasing and human relations. So in no particular order, since I have mayor first, do you want to just start with that and work our way down, or is there a different order that's preferred?
Well, I think some of the first ones on the agenda are very light and probably can move right through them. And then we can get on to the others that might take a little bit longer time, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So the mayor's page 1, and there's just a pro forma 2.3% salary and wages increase. That's the only increase I see. And once again, it's a pro forma increase. So are there any issues or any questions in connection with that?
I can tell you we're very satisfied with the recommendation. We have no additional issues that we wish to put forward, but we're certainly willing to answer any questions that may arise.
Okay, so there being no questions, we can dispense with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item is chief of staff. That's found on pages 8 through 9. And with the chief of staff, once again, there appears to be a 5.5% increase in wages and salaries over and above 2022, as well as a city clerk increase of 2.9 wages and salary, as well as a 2.3% an increase of $2,000 for once again wages and salaries for the grants administrator, I suppose. And that seems to be the extent of it. The total increase for the chief of staff's office is a 3.2%. Does anyone, Alicia, if you're on, do you want to just speak on those matters?
I don't think I have anything to add. I think that we should ask Henry and Tom to just take a look at the salaries. I think the salary line for chief of staff should just be the same wage increase that everybody else in the city is getting. So it should probably be 2.35, not 5.5. But
Alicia, I think we have a difference of where you are right now, and we can discuss that either later or tomorrow morning if you want, and we can adjust it accordingly if need be.
sure, but just so everybody knows, I'm getting the same raise as everybody else in the city.
Yeah, the ordinance was 2.35 across the board for all 15 or so ordinance employees, but I think that there's a difference between what the system has for you right now and what I had for you right now. So let's just resolve that afterwards.
Okay, so that's going to be 2.3, and not because I thought the 5.5 was because there was some bump up in the salary over and above.
No, I think if I'm not mistaken, Alicia, you're the only ordinance employee and chief of staff, right?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, it's just a matter of what the current rate is versus the increase. I may have implied the increase over an already calculated 2.35, but we'll figure that out. We'll drop it if need be, leave it as is if we come to agreement. Okay. So it'll be a matter of $3,200 or so.
Yeah, it's a negligible sum, but okay. The next thing is the city clerk. There's that.
Just Ed, if you don't mind, there's just one little minor point. The sheet that I have shows the total for 13.7%. Is that that's just typo, obviously?
Yeah, the system, James. If you don't override the the total percentage calculation. It sums it up. And I'll correct that. It should be probably something in the 3-ish range. All the other
Okay.
ones should be fine.
Okay.
And is that for the chief of staff, salary position?
No, that's the total chief of staff at the bottom of that page, Ed, where it shows 13.7. That's summing all the percentages instead of calculating.
Oh, I
the
see.
total. Yeah, so
Yeah, I see.
it will come out somewhere in the 3-ish range.
Okay. Fair enough. And then there's, once again, the city clerk, that seems to be sort of a standard increase to some extent. It's above the 2.3, but it's is there a reason that that's above the 2.3? Is there some sort of adjustment that was made?
It might be a combination. Well, there are two clerks that are ordinance employees. There's Irene and Donna King. So,
Oh, I see. That's the
and
common.
then there's some other employees in there that are regular union adjustments, not ordinance adjustments, which are probably more than 2.25%.
I understand. Okay. And the grants administrator, that's a pro forma increase. So is there any other question or issue in connection with that?
Ed, I would just point out that position has been split. It's communications director. That was Josh, and that position has recently been filled. But the grants coordinator position was split out, and Rita has been hired part-time and reports to me for grants administration. So
Okay.
it's really, I don't know what the right title is, communications director without any grants responsibility.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Well,
Are there any other questions? Okay, we can move along to Corporation Counsel. Mr. Coppola, you're up.
Yes, thank you. I'm also here with Deputy Corporation Counsel Jeff Spar.
I'm Mr. Spar.
I think, where is he? There he is. I think I'm also titled as Jeff Spar in my box as well. So I feel like I've gotten smarter and better looking. So let's, I guess with regard to our budget, Mr. Chairman, one area where I think it's necessary for us to point out and to make a request to reconsider, I guess, what's been proposed as the that's been proposed by the CFO and mayor. We'd like to have the number we had in our original request reconsidered, and that is for the other professional services line item, and that is account 010300. It's
Yeah.
Fund 5258. In 2022, there was a well, actually, the current, yeah. So the current budget is the 2022. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
The current budget is 2022. Yeah, the one that we're considering is 2023.
So in the 2022 budget, we have 250,000 for other professional services. And what was proposed for 23 was 450,000. What was recommended was 300,000. Currently, we have spent in our current budget for this line item of 250,000, 195,000. So we've already expended 78% of that budget to date. And I anticipate that we will expend the remainder, which is approximately 55,000 in the next 30 to 45 days. Other professional services are services that we incur for the most part in litigation. A lot of it is and obviously your counsel but for everyone else here, those expenses would be in a lot of our cases miscellaneous costs associated with litigation, filing fees, marshal service, transcripts for depositions, for court hearings, and expert fees. Quite frankly, the expert fees are probably the vast majority of the costs incurred here, and the majority of them are in the tax appeals. As you may know, we've been beating this drum or discussing this for, I think, about 3 to 4 years now. There was a substantial number of appeals, property tax assessment appeals filed as a result of the 2018 citywide revaluation. Quite frankly, I think Norwalk had maybe the most, or definitely one of the highest number of appeals of substantial commercial properties of any other municipality, probably in the state of Connecticut, for that 2018 revaluation. A lot of the cases are significant in number, tens of millions of dollars. One that I had a hearing on today was a total of $580 million. There's not a lot of cases. The current case we have now on the Sono collection may be the biggest property tax assessment appeal by way of value pending in the state of Connecticut. You don't get a lot of $580 million properties that are the subject of litigation in tax appeals in Connecticut. All of the costs associated with those appeals, including for the consultant that works with the assessor's office, comes out of this budget and out of this line item. And that's, again, the vast majority of what's spent there on a regular annual basis. We are in our third year of the reval by way of appeals. We've been able to resolve the vast majority of them. But what's left are a lot of the big cases that, for a lot of reasons, haven't been able to be resolved, and we're incurring a lot of costs, particularly with our experts. And those experts generally is our appraiser in the case, and we also sometimes also have a consulting appraiser that works with the assessor. The assessor's office has also had some vacancies for a period of time. For example, there has not been a deputy assessor for a very long time, I think for probably 2-3 years now. And so the assessor can only do so much. And with regard to these commercial tax appeals, he does use a consultant, again, paid out of our budget, to assist with the review and analysis of these cases. And, by way of background, I may have said this in the past before. I mean, I'm in charge of the property tax assessment appeals defense for a lot of other communities in Fairfield County, Westport, Weston, Wilton, New Canaan. I do the big commercials properties in Trumbull. We have a good process in Norwalk. We have a very cost-efficient process in Norwalk, but there's no way to avoid the costs. And I think we do a good job. We do the best job possible based on what we're dealing with. Furthermore, we have litigation involving the POCO project and Mr. Milligan. Some of you may have read about it in the past in Nancy on Norwalk or in the Hour. In those cases, we did negotiate a not to exceed number from Shipman and Goodwin for their services in the case. As part of that, we had agreed as part of the law department to take on a good share of the burden of the litigation. And we've been taking on our end of it, and it's exhausting a few of us. Nonetheless, there is a portion of that not to exceed cap that we still have not expended. There's also, in addition to that, hard costs will incur in the case for experts. There's a number of different experts we have to get in that case. A property tax valuation specialist, and a few other experts regarding the redevelopment plan that's been challenged in that case. So just in that case, I anticipate about $300,000 plus minus, the majority of which would be, almost all of which of that number would be in the next 2023 budget based on what's going on in the case right now. So what's been recommended was 300,000. That one case is going to wipe out 300,000, and we still have all the property tax assessment appeals. And so there's just no way. Quite frankly, it's impossible for us to work with 300,000. And I'll be frank with you, I think 450,000 is a conservative budget. It probably should be more. It may end up being more, but I can't predict which cases settle. So without knowing that, I made an estimate that was my most conservative estimate possible, and that's where we came up with the 450,000. Again, and I just reiterate, we're going above and beyond in our department. Quite frankly, I'm putting in more hours than I'm getting paid for. I'm handling high-end commercial tax appeal work and other things that I get paid substantially more in my private practice for. And so since we have a couple holes in our department, we have 2 vacant positions. And I think all the attorneys in our office are going above and beyond as far as the time they're putting in. We're doing everything we possibly can to keep costs down, but it is what it is. And we're doing the absolute best we could do. So I strongly request that our initial request of 450,000 for this line item be reconsidered.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
The first question is, when you're referring to POCO, you mean Wall Street Place?
Yes, Mayor. The project is now in recent years been referred to as the Wall Street Place project. For purposes of the litigation, some of the entities involved are actually POCO entities. So we do refer to we refer to the project as the Wall Street Place project. It's no longer the POCO project, but for purposes of litigation, we often refer to it as POCO because the defendants are actually named. Some of the entities are named as defendants are the POCO entities.
Yeah, thank you. My next question might be more appropriately answered by Mr. Burney, but maybe not. Relative to the vacancy in the Assistant Tax Assessor's office, or even Mr. Dakowitz, why has that not been filled yet?
I'll respond. Trying to find assessors in the state of Connecticut is exceedingly hard. We were fortunate to find Bill Ford in 6 months after the former assessor retired. The deputy assessor position has been open. We've been looking for qualified people to fill that. We've reposted. We've changed the title, looking at qualifications. It's just exceedingly hard in the state of Connecticut to find good senior assessor personnel.
Mayor, if I could add to that too, I've been trying to assist the assessor with finding a deputy assessor, and I could tell you as well that it's a tough market for assessors and has been in Connecticut for some period of time. It's a real issue. There are open positions currently now for the assessor position in East Haven, Trumbull, Bridgeport, Hamden as an interim. They're looking for an assessor. I think Milford was open. I think they may have just hired somebody. There's a number of positions open. And I think one of the challenges here is that at the salary of 120,000, it's really difficult to get someone who could otherwise be an assessor for, maybe $10,000 less, $10,000 or $15,000 less. I actually know what the other, I think Trumbull's, I don't want to start naming the numbers because I don't know if it's to what extent those numbers are public, but I'll just tell you that I happen to know what the numbers are in some of these other towns because we've been trying to figure out how to recruit people to help fill this position. And it's frankly been a challenge. I just want to reiterate, it hasn't been for a lack of effort from the assessor and others who've been trying, including myself, who've been trying to help him. It's very frustrating.
Just 2 more questions and then a comment, I think. Go ahead, Mr. Dakowitz.
I would just add, we had an offer to an individual that Mr. Ford had worked with in Massachusetts. And because of COVID, they ended up declining the offer. They wouldn't relocate. So it's been difficult, no question about it.
I think we're doing better than Massachusetts, so I thought that maybe we would want to relocate. Two more questions and then a comment. Mr. Capola, what are we doing to fill the positions in the vacancies in the Corporation Counsel's office?
We had a listing out for the vacant corporation counsel position. We're looking for somebody with some experience within the areas of land use and property tax assessment appeal defense work. There were no applicants that had had a significant experience in either area, let alone both. We then reposted the position. I don't know if that's closed now with the reposting. There was also a grade change for that position, so we reposted it with the higher salary range. And I don't think I've gotten the remainder of applications, or it may not be closed yet on the second go around. Quite frankly, it's a tough market for attorneys with experience in Fairfield County. There's a number of firms in the last few months who have actually attorneys. A number of firms over the last few months have said to me, "Hey, if you know somebody good, we're looking for somebody with X years of experience in some of these areas." So it is unfortunately a really tough job market for those with experience in some of these areas.
Yeah,
The
and
other thing-
we lost somebody. A private firm took one of our guys from us.
Yes, he took Brian. Yeah.
And quite frankly, we almost lost one of our other attorneys in the office who was heavily recruited by another potential employer, and we had to fight to keep him.
Well, that shows that we have good employees.
I'm sorry, Tom, do you want to talk about the salary and wage line?
I'm sorry, who's that?
Tom
Sorry,
Ellis.
can you
Oh, Tom
repeat
Ellis.
that, Henry?
Yeah, Tom Ellis. Okay.
Did you want to talk about the salary and wage line for corporate counsel?
Yeah, so after much discussion, we ended up fully recommending the requested amount of 1,187,000. That's the first line, very top line at the corporate counsel area. And that's
Yep.
reflective of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mario, 5 assistant counsels on your team, right?
Yes, I think there was some confusion. I think that in prior analysis, there was a thought that maybe we're asking for 3, and it was reduced to 2, which is the proper number, but we were only asking for 2, not 3. So there was a little bit of confusion in that. And that's
Assistants,
gotten
not
resolved.
associates. And assistants, not associates, right? So
There's an,
all of
yeah,
them will be,
it's a little complicated, but yes, there's an assistant. Currently, there's an assistant and associate, and we've had trouble with the associate position, so we wanted to upgrade that to an assistant, and that's what's, I believe, now being recommended.
So what happened was, there was a miscommunication on my part. And Mario was looking to replace Brian, who left, and there was an associate position.
I think somebody has some background noise.
I think Troy's lighting up. It's lighting up on your end. Do you have something on or? No? Okay. Then we can mute in the meantime, I guess.
There
Until,
was an associate position that was upgraded to assistant. There was an assistant position filled by Brian that we are replacing. And due to some confusion, we cut the requested from 1.187 million to 1.042 million. And we wanted to give the staffing that 187 represented, but we made an error. So that 1.042 will be increasing by about 140,000 to give Mario the full complement of staff that he needs. So we gave him the full complement on the salary line, but it doesn't reflect it now. And then on the other professional services, we had gone from 250 to 300, and as he has requested this evening, to go to 450.
Okay, that brings me with another question. How does that affect the cap?
I think we have to find funding somewhere else for that increase. If that comes out of contingency, that's what we'll do. Tom is keeping a record of all of the open items as we go through these BET hearings. And at the end, we'll see what we're looking to do. And we have to fit it under the cap that was approved by the council.
And so I have one more question and a comment. Relative to Tyler Technologies, why is Norwalk having more tax appeals than virtually any other in the state of Connecticut? Did Tyler Technologies have a problem? Or I know they're certified by the state of Connecticut, one of few. And it's hard to find somebody during a reval year to do the reval for us. And I know they have a team that works in the city and goes over everything, but why are we having so many tax appeals?
A few reasons. Number one, well, first of all, with regard to revaluation companies in Norwalk, actually, companies want to apply in Norwalk. Norwalk is one of the most sought after communities for doing revaluation. So we'll get a full complement of companies applying with Vision, Municipal Revaluation Services, Tyler, and maybe a few others. Tyler takes direction from the assessor, was a prior assessor, Michael Stewart, and Deputy Assessor Bill O'Brien. So they ultimately signed off on the grand list, and they ultimately made decisions based upon the revaluation that was conducted by Tyler. There's a lot of high value properties in Norwalk, which is a testament to the fact that people want to invest in Norwalk. Values are going up. When you have higher value properties, there's more opportunity for tax representatives. We're looking to make a contingency fee to promote property tax assessment appeals to those owners. So I think that because, quite frankly, Norwalk is probably one of the most desirable communities to own commercial property in Connecticut. It's right there with Stamford and Greenwich. It's the top in Connecticut, and so you're going to be a target for property tax assessment appeals for that reason. Currently, Greenwich is going through their revaluation. I've actually got some BA hearings tomorrow myself in Greenwich. So as Norwalk's going to be a target, more than a target, quite frankly, than Waterbury or other communities where the values aren't as high as in Norwalk. So unfortunately, it's become a cottage industry to challenge property tax assessment appeals and hope that even where you don't have a valid appeal, you'll get a reduction if you could, go through certain steps. So I don't know. I'm not going to say that the revaluation was not properly done in Norwalk. I don't believe that. I think the prior assessor was certainly aggressive on commercial properties, but in a lot of cases spot on, and some cases too low. But you didn't have in Norwalk a situation where the assessor was too low on many of them that I've seen. So it's a good question. I'm sorry that I couldn't give you a more concise answer, but it's complicated. It requires a complicated response.
Okay, so now my comment and then I'm done. I know the law department is run as a professional law department, probably more professional than I've ever seen it in the past. And I want to give credit to Mr. Coppola for organizing it like a professional law department. However, when we start talking about estimates as to what things are going to cost in the future, what kinds of litigation we might be facing, I do have a challenge with putting money up front if we don't know the money up front is actually what we need, simply because that, as we were talking, Mr. Dakowitz, that is going to increase the cap level, and we'll have to find the money elsewhere. So I would like to keep this as an open item relative to that, and I'll defer to the other BET members. Keep it as an open item, and then talk about the possibility of contingency should the money be needed. I know the money, when it's needed, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to pay it. But to put the money up front and thereby risk increasing our cap or having to find the money someplace else, I would like to keep it as an open item and continue the discussion. So I'm finished. Thank you.
Mark it as an open item. I've got two questions. Number one, just to this is a question, Mr. Dakowitz. The budget that we have in front of us, does that reflect the 0.5% decrease from every department, or is that or is this what was recommended and we're going to be receiving sort of updated budgets from the departments with some kind of a decrease, either 0.5% or something else?
This was what was recommended and which was presented to the Common Council. And similar to last year, at the mayor's direction, the assumption was that as departments come into the BET, they would talk about a potential 0.5% reduction to those numbers. Mayor, is that accurate?
Yes, we come in with a request, a wish list, and you and I, Mr. Dakowitz, go over it kind of with a fine tooth comb. And we look at the what is needed, but I think there's always room for looking at something in a little bit more detail and seeing if there's not an option or an opportunity to reduce by, which is a very small percentage in most cases, by the way, or a small amount of dollars of 0.5%. Last year, I give the department heads tremendous credit because not only did many of them, or all of them, come in with a 0.5 reduction, but many came in with more. And I think that's a credit to the department heads because they realize that in the state of Connecticut, we have to rely on property taxes. And when we rely too heavily on property taxes, we make it very, very difficult for people to who are on fixed incomes to pay those property taxes, and they have to make very difficult decisions. So I do give the department heads a lot of credit because last year they really stepped up and did the things that we asked them to do. And we'll see what happens this year. But yes, Mr. Dakowitz, that's exactly right.
Okay. And the next question is of Mr. Coppola. I believe you said that you within the next 30 or 45 days, you were going to run through your other professional services budget. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And so what will there be a need for additional monies after that before the start of the next fiscal cycle?
Probably. I mean, because I do a lot of work in the valuation world. I mean, I may be able to get appraisers to hold off, on doing their appraisals with us, depending on court deadlines. We may be able to somehow make it work, but I doubt it. More than likely, we're going to probably need additional funds. I mean, there's a couple of appraisals I'm thinking of right now on significant commercial properties that are going to be in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, and there's nothing I can do about it. So, we're dictated. Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of the court, and in many ways, including with regard to scheduling. So, there's deadlines for when the expert reports or appraisals are due, and and we have to be billed when it was done. We can't have a bill be done. We can have somebody do the work and bill us 3-4 months later as a municipality. So, probably. Well, we'll do our best, but more than to avoid it having to come back during this current fiscal year. I can't see us not having to.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Let's put out one more thing, Mr. Chairman, and maybe I could ask Mr. Dashowitz this. For example, in the Milligan litigation, we had $200,000 of settlement funds with one defendant, and those funds were used towards fees. Were used as an offset, but I don't know if they're actually an offset. I think the money was spent there was just a settlement funds. Is that, I don't even know if Mr. Dashowitz knows the answer to that question.
The settlement funds come in as a revenue item. They don't offset expenses in the department. So Chitsime sets up a special revenue source for there. We project as part of all of our revenues. But if we do well, we may have a surplus in that area. And if there's a requirement for additional expenses, we can come before the BET with a special transfer. And if they approve, we can do it that way. But generally, the revenues and expenses are kept separately.
So Mr. Dashowitz confirmed what I thought, which is in the Milligan case, we had a $200,000 settlement from one defendant, the least culpable, quite frankly. And it was to the public parties, the city and the redevelopment agency. It was agreed that all that money would go to the city, because at that point, the city was paying the legal fees for both parties. So it looks like we spent the $200,000 out of our budget for other professional services, when in fact, yes, we spent it, but the 200,000 was actually paid for in another line item for revenue, which was accepted as revenue. So for our purposes of the case, that 200,000 was used for fees, but in fact, it doesn't show that in the budget. So I just wanted to point that out to the chairman. And quite frankly, if we're successful in the case, there's going to be significant funds that come to the city, not into our budget, but come to the city for the benefit of the city. All you're seeing is the cost coming out of our budget. You're not seeing the revenue coming in as a result of the work.
I see. That's important. It's important.
Yeah,
point.
I think it's very important for everybody to understand that.
Mhm. Are there any other questions?
But we will look at the revenues that we expect to come in later on in this review session, aren't we? Not today, not tonight, I know.
Yeah, we have that in our tax but we have anticipated revenues now at this point.
Right, so is that going to show up in those revenues?
No, because it's not anticipated. It's not something that's predictable, right?
There would be no way for me to predict, if we were to be successful in litigation and we were able to get an award of damages, what that would be. It's a fairly wide range right now, and based on the manner in which the defendant is handling the case, the defendants are handling the case. They're pretty much doing everything possible to delay. So we could be talking about this in 2024.
Yeah. So we really can't make an argument for offsetting some of the revenues that you could possibly get in against the increase that we're having here. So as Henry says, they really can't match and mix them. You can't mix them and match them.
No, but I was just referring to the 200,000 we've received within the last year. Again, and the understanding was that it was basically an offset for costs, but in fact, doesn't show that way in the budget. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, in the big picture, it does.
Yeah, and in the big picture, there'll hopefully be a much bigger number as far as funds coming back to the city.
The expert witnesses that you use, do you have one expert witness, or do you use the same ones over and over again? Or is there any way that we could, is there a way to possibly lock one in and use that person and say, look, we're going to guarantee you this much business and you'll be our expert witness on all of these big cases?
I did something similar to that when I came in. The city was using a number of different appraisers. There was not a lot of loyalty to the city, in the sense that it was hard to get appraisers to do things quickly if we needed them to. And so we basically agreed upon a few different appraisers who we like to work with. And one of the first things I did was to negotiate the fees. Quite frankly, I said to, one or two of them, here's what you get paid in the other communities I work in. And you were charging Norwalk more. And so we're getting the lowest possible rates from those appraisers. And I have the benefit of knowing what they get paid in other communities. So yeah, we've certainly done that and negotiated with them. And quite frankly, some of the appraisers we work with often, I'm fairly convinced they're not charging us for all their time for review and analysis. So we've been very fortunate in that regard.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just have one question. This is Troy. Mary, when is the next reval? Is it
October 2020, right? October 2020.
Mary, Mr.
when
Mary,
is the
you're
next reval?
2023.
I agree with the CFO. It's 2023 would be our next citywide revaluation. And when that happens, then the cases come starting in the summer of 2024.
I think the legislature, if I'm not mistaken, is also trying to make that a little less difficult for cities, and maybe finding a different methodology rather than every 5 years, because every 5 years it's costing the city $2.5 million to do an effective reval.
There's some legislation proposed, including now legislation to extend revals due to, circumstances of COVID for an additional year. But quite frankly, with the mercy of the court, and, when the court's short-staffed, it makes it more difficult to handle the cases. It requires more time of everybody involved, and it runs up the costs.
Mr. Spar, I think you were going to say something?
Well, no, actually, I was going to make that comment that I'd read that there was going to be some legislation about the possibility of postponing reval. We had that one time before about, I don't know, 25 years ago, where municipalities could opt to extend the reval period of time. So.
Okay. Well, let's hope so. Any other questions? Okay.
I just have one comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When we have these meetings, it's an opportunity to give a shout out to good work. And as I said before, when Mr. Capola came on, he's organized the law department in a way that is what you'd see in a professional law agency, a law firm, where they have regular meetings, they discuss each other's cases, so everybody's aware of what's going on. The other thing is Mr. Spar, he's been here for, I don't know, how many years, Jeff?
35.
35 years. He has saved the city of Norwalk a tremendous amount of money through effective litigation. He's very skilled at what he does. And, he's brought in some cases that perhaps would have cost the city 3 and 4 and 5 times as much as the settlement issue was. And that's because, again, because of his skilled negotiation. So I just want to give a shout out to the two people here.
Well, thank you so much. And we're very happy that we have Mario leading up the team, because it really is a good team and we all interact with one another. So I'm not just saying that, it's true. So it was nice of you, Mr. Mayor, to recognize his work.
Thank you very much. And the others in the office are working incredibly hard. We push people right to the end of where they could go as far as hours of work. And, we're really proud of all the work that we're doing. And we hope it slows down at some point.
Thank you, Mario, for that and for your work. So we'll leave that as an open item. The other professional services item, the 450 requested, 300 recommended, and recognizing that the wages and salary line should be 1,187,793, as opposed to the 1,042,187. So thank you for that presentation. The next department up is the town clerk. And that could be found on page 1 and 2 of our packets. And is the town clerk on? Okay, that looks to be
I don't see him here, but it looks like a reduction.
it looks like a
I
total.
think Rick had a conflict. I know that Lola spoke to him earlier today, but I took a quick look at this. It's really pretty straightforward. It's ordinance, and then there was a small adjustment on his IT services.
Yeah.
His bills are very regular. They're very predictable. They've been 80-ish year after year after year. So that's what he was looking to
Yeah,
adjust. And we discussed that briefly and agreed on it, and that's where we are.
All right, so that represents a 1.4% overall increase. Correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right. Are there any questions or comments concerning that? All right, fair enough. Registrar of Voters.
Hello,
Mr. Wells, how are you?
I'm here. Brian, I believe, is on vacation on a boat somewhere, so I don't see him on. So you got me.
Okay, so it's a total of 1.5% increase over 2022. And the salary increase appears to be like an ordinance number, and that appears to be the only increase with a total of 1.5% increase from 2022. Are there any questions about that? Okay.
There are a few potential issues that you probably should be aware of. Obviously, the potential for a primary citywide this summer, because we have constitutional offices, particularly Secretary of State, with many candidates. There's good chance there'll be a primary there, possibly for comptroller and maybe on governor or something on the Republican side as well. No way to control that, but we usually don't, it usually does not go in the budget unless we're sure there's a primary. And of course, we don't know until much later whether that's going to happen. Redistricting is adding one polling place, but only in state federal years like this year. That just takes us from 12 to 13, but we use 13 in the municipal years. So there's no real significant change from that. So we have the equipment and everything for those kinds of increases, which we scrounged up over the years in the past. So we're all set in that regard. Otherwise, we just hope we don't have unexpected primaries like we just went through, which make the budgeting fun.
Okay.
Good.
There are primaries this summer. Where would that money come from? Would that be from contingency or?
That's what's usually been done. They just take it out of contingency because there's no way to budget for it, or if you put it in, we might not have to spend it. And you never really know, even presidential primaries are sometimes unknown. Although the last time cycle on that, you got kicked into the wrong year because of COVID. But budget wise, the legislature is back to their usual things with possibly extending absentee voting because of COVID. That tends to increase costs a little bit for the town clerk or for us, depending on exactly how that works out. Just to keep track of it, normally we handle a lot of that internally as they come in, but if it increased significantly, we'd have to hire people to help with it. That's what happened in the presidential year where they went from a usual 2,000 or 3,000 to 16,000 absentees. I suppose Congress could still pass their bills that would require early voting, but doesn't look like that's going to make it through the Senate. So I wouldn't expect that this year, but who knows? Things change. A month is a million years in politics, as we know. Maybe there'll be another invasion. Who knows?
I just saw, speaking of that, I just saw that it came up on my AP that the Russians are bombing a nuclear power station now.
Perfect.
So that's always good news.
So
Mr. Ferry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it's just what is a primary run nowadays?
90,000, 100,000. If it's citywide, much less, obviously, if it's less polling places, less ballots, less people, less transportation of equipment.
Perfect. Okay. How soon would we know if there was going to be a primary? Not until the summer?
Well, then the convention, if it's a statewide event like Secretary of State, the convention is in early May. If you get 15% in the convention, but lose, and you decide to primary, you automatically can have one. So you wouldn't know till then, at the earliest, and others would have to petition, and so you maybe know by the 1st of June or so. But it's hard to predict now, and of course, if we had. We could have primaries for the state rep positions. 2 of our state reps are running for Secretary of State, Terry Wood on the Republican side, and Stephanie Thomas on the Democratic side. So there might be primaries for their successors if they were on the ballot for Secretary of State, or they may both do poorly and be right back where they started. And as incumbents, this is the wonders of politics.
Okay.
We wish we knew.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wells. Appreciate that. Fire Department. Chief, I believe I saw you on.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mayor, how are you?
The mayor's muted.
I'm sorry.
The chief asked you how you were.
Oh, I'm doing well, Chief. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is a little bit more
So we're
elaborate.
a little more involved.
Let me just see if I can summarize. It's basically an overall 6.2% increase over 2022. There seem to be significant reductions in one in buildings of $11,000 and one in plumbing and heating. And motor vehicle and parts, there's a increase of around $13,000. Other professional services, there's an increase of about $41,000. Wages and salaries for under fire equipment. I'm not sure how that qualifies as wages and salaries, but I guess there's someone that takes care of the fire equipment. That's an increase of $8,000, and then wages and salaries under prevention, another increase of 36, and an increase of $21,000. So overall, with those increases and the size of the budget and a couple reductions, it amounts to a 6.2% increase over 2022, and I believe that's the requested amount was 22,227,000, and the recommended is 21,866,000. Is that about right?
Yes, and that's a reduction of 1.62%. I can go line by line. There are some items that were lowered and some were raised, and I can, if you want me to do that.
Perhaps if you would, yeah, just to give us a sort of a brief overview.
Okay, so we'll start with our administration account. A little more money from 2022 was added just to equal out the second assistant chief that was hired. And then the next line is the overtime account for administration, which actually stayed the same, but I'm looking to reduce that by 3,000. I'm going to go just with the increases first. We have contracts with the printer companies. They raised their contract from 1,700 to 2,200, so that was an increase. Little things like that. The was increased from 12,141,000 to 12,363,000. Mr. Dashowitz wanted us to include severance payouts, which totals about $200,000. So that's the increase in that account. We have wages and salaries for the stipends for EMT, EMR, and language stipends, which is an increase from 142 to 163,000. That's by contract. Our good friends at the water companies all raised their prices on the hydrants. We went from $299 up to $314 to $321.
Well, Chief, you're a bit digital, so it's very difficult to make out what you're saying.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, for some reason the connection.
I'm too low.
I'm
Chief
sorry?
Gatto, if you can just stop your camera, maybe that will help with your audio.
Okay. Fire prevention, the fire commissioners voted to have 2 part-time fire inspectors, so that salary had to get put back into the the budget. That was another increase. The other professional services under fire training. Every 2 years, we're by contract, we have to give promotional exams for lieutenant, captain, and deputy chief. Those were estimated at 70,000, and that is the increase from, I'm sorry, it was 37,000. The increase from 30 plus 37 is the actual increase for the total. The motor vehicle that you mentioned for the fire mechanics, we were looking for 139.9. Was recommended to be 130. That was an increase because the mechanics are saying that the price of parts are increasing, some between 20 and 30%. So we're trying to add a little bit more just to try to get through next year with a price increase. There was another increase in the yearly rent payment for Station 3, which is on Van Zandt Street. It went from 46,735 to 49,255. So that was another increase. And then so that's it for all the increases. So I did calculate based on the mayor and the CFO's recommendation, another 54,000 in cuts. So actually, from the total requested of 22,227,106, with the 54,000 cut, it comes out to 21,816,033. And I can go through all the cuts if you want me to.
Oh, that won't be necessary. We appreciate that.
Okay.
The coming in at that number. So that's, that represents a lot of, that's helpful in terms of, trying to not increase or not to go over the cap and just, hopefully come in somewhere under the cap if we can help it. So I thank you for that. So that number should be 21,816.33. No, 21,816.33.
03.
033. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right.
So it's a 1.84% cut from the requested.
Appreciate that,
Mr.
Chief. Thank
Chairman?
you. And
I just had a quick
that's you. You did
question.
a remarkable job as well.
Yes, thank you, Chief, for that.
I just had a quick question, Ed, or Chief. You mentioned that the fire hydrants, my favorite subject, they're gone up again.
Yeah.
Didn't we just get an increase on them?
Yes, we did. They're going to do it every year.
They're gonna do it every year now?
Well, they did it last year and they're doing it this year for next year, after July.
Yeah.
Let me find out.
So is there nothing we can do about that? I mean, they snuck up on us last year to do that.
Well,
And
they're
looks like they're doing
supposed
it
to-
again.
Well, they're notifying either the CFO, I believe the CFO, if I'm not mistaken, of a price increase. They're supposed to give us 6 months notice. Fortunately, their 6 months notice falls in the middle of our budget year. And that's why we were short last year, because we didn't have enough money. And
Yeah, but
I'm
that,
trying
no,
to,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm just trying to, we calculated, Tom Ellis and myself, we calculated their increases, and we're assuming that South Norfolk Electric is going to copy the first district water, just like they did the previous year. And if you want to keep our $4,500 for our hydrant painting, that's the amount, $321,464. So that'll cover next year. What happens after that, God only knows.
So
They're
they
gonna
went for
raise it
like
any
20
more.
years. They went for like, what was it, 15 or 20 years without giving us an increase. Then they give us an
Correct.
increase, and now it starts, they're gonna do it every year?
They're at $84. South Norfolk Electric was at $84 for years and years. And then First District raised it to like 206, I believe.
Yeah.
And then to 213. And now it's gonna go to 214. So it's $1.60 more for 886 hydro. And we're assuming,
Yeah.
so they're going from 188,000 to 190.5 thousand, and 121,000 to 127,000, rounding it off.
In the great scheme of things, and the size of your budget, it's not a lot of money, but it just galls me that
Yeah,
it looks like they hit the mother load here all of a sudden and decided they're going to go to the trough and take as much as they possibly can out of it. I guess and we're kind of stuck over a barrel here, I guess. Okay.
I mean, okay.
Ed, this is Troy. Ed, Chief, when is the fireman's contract? When is that negotiated? Is that coming up? Is that every 5 years, or how often is that?
It's every 4 years, and it runs through 2024.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Chief, I had one more question. It's Jim Frere again. You were breaking up when you were talking about the other professional services, the training that went from 27 to 29 to 70.
Okay. Okay, the reason for that is 2022, it was 29,368. Well, by contract, we have to have a running promotional list in place. So every 2 years, we have to give new exams. We have to give a new lieutenant exam, a captain exam, a deputy chief exam. Those 3 exams average of $37,716. So that's why we went from 29 to 70 based on the promotional. Now, next year, it'll drop back down again because we don't have to give the test.
Okay, good. You were just breaking up when you mentioned that. That's why I just had the question. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions?
you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is the police department, although, I noticed that purchasing and human relations is probably not going to take that much time.
Yeah, Mr.
Can I
Commissioner,
jump in for a second, Ed, just to confirm with everybody, there was no.
I want to give a shout out to the fire department. Last year, they came in well under the 0.05%. Year after year, they come in under budget. And that's not simply because they've overinflated their budget. That's because they've worked hard to keep things reasonable, to be frugal wherever they can. And the men and now women of the fire department are, I see them all the time. They're truly dedicated people. I'd like to give them a shout out, especially, during the pandemic when they were responding to medical emergencies. They were coming into work every single day. Their families were home alone. They were putting themselves in harm's way, perhaps by being exposed to the COVID-19. So just an opportunity to give a shout out to our men and women of the fire department and our chief and deputy assistant chiefs. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And can I
Thank you,
just
Mayor.
confirm-
Appreciate it.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the
yes,
members of,
thank you, Chief.
okay, have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks, Chief.
So, should we do police or can we just dispense with the?
I don't see anybody from the police here. I'm wondering if through the confusion,
Oh, there you go.
they might not. have-
But we
They are
moved
now
them.
going on the 14th, or
Okay.
Monday, March 14th.
Okay,
Oh, we
They
thank
did
you.
didn't have all their, they didn't have all their key personnel available.
So who else is going now?
Okay, so now we have purchasing, central services, and then human relations. So,
Resources?
human resources, I apologize, human resources.
This would have been the attachment that was sent out yesterday morning, I believe. It was
Yes.
not included in the, well, it is part of the 42 pager, but
Yes.
not part of the consolidated package from late
I
last week.
see it right here, yeah. So human relations and personnel, I guess, is on page 2, but there was a standalone printout that we got. And then I don't know what I have the other one. I don't know that I have, oh, I do have purchasing, yeah. That's another page that we got separately. So who
Yeah,
would like
those
to go first?
should have come together to all of you folks yesterday, probably around mid-morning.
Yeah, I do have it.
There are no changes from those to the 42 pager, so the same information.
Okay. So 536 was requested, 536 is recommended, which represents 151,000, sorry, which represents a 39% interest over, increase over 2022. The biggest item being a wages and salary and purchasing to hire a purchasing officer. Is that it?
Yes, that's the majority of the change there.
Okay. Is that a new position or is that a position that had been vacant?
It's existing position, but we took away the funding from it previous years, but due to the increased volume that we've been pushing through, and then the forecasting for the upcoming projects related to school construction, the ARPA funding, we feel the need to hire another, we'll say, a strategic position, so we could have more bandwidth to tackle those projects, along with take care of the long, be more strategic on implementing new things, such as doing training for all our departments, do a little background or back-end auditing on everything, and innovate, implement more innovative technologies with all that.
I think it should be pointed out, Sharon is one of my closet techies, and she has automated on a software application called Bonfire. And by using Bonfire over the last 2 or 3 years, she's doubled or tripled the number of RFPs that the city has handled with the same level of personnel. So it's been remarkable. The other thing we're doing is, historically, in the past, a number of departments would go off and do purchasing on their own, and they would not go through the purchasing procurement department, which is a severe operating control. So over the last several years, we have funneled all of this purchasing activity through the procurement department as it should be. Sometimes it's just a question of should I do an RFP? Can I do an RFQ? Do I just get 3 bids depending upon the size and the nature? But I feel it's a very strong change for an operating control that people are consulting Sharon and her team more frequently. They know they have to go through there. For example, we have added a screen on RFPs and a rider on contracts regarding IT quality from a cybersecurity point of view. What kind of access do they want to our networks and data? What kind of controls do they have? So that we make sure we only give them the access that's appropriate based on the controls they have. So they've handled a lot more work with the same budget, and we felt it was important, especially with the ARPA funds, where we're going to be doing many RFPs to get qualified vendors, and that's going to be just over the next several years. We felt that that titled position that had been defunded years ago should be funded.
And I'm struck by the telephone increase. Is that it's a $45,000 increase over 2022? Is that because we have a new system or something?
Now, what had happened was back in 2020, 21, the telephone expenses for City Hall and some of the other departments was under budget and management's. And then due to when some of the staff members from Henry's team had retired, central services took over that account. COVID happened, and then bills were just being dropped off our department. So we felt that it should be paid. You know, we cannot not have telephone service. So it basically screwed all the data between the transition from budget management to our department. And so finally now, you know, everything's coming to us. So forward looking, it'll be consistent. So that's why it's basically looking out of whack.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, just another comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You know, the quality of work of our people just shows that we've been very fortunate in recruiting top-notch people. And Ms. Connors is certainly a part of that. She came in, she knew that she could do the job. She allowed us not to hire an assistant for a time period. And she worked by herself pretty much for a long period of time. To give an example, as Mr. Dakowitz mentioned, using Bonfire, it allowed her to do so much more in the same amount of time. She's become much more efficient, much more effective than in previous years when we had other people in the position. Now, based on the work that she's doing, I concur this position is absolutely needed. Although I am reluctant to hire new personnel, unless absolutely necessary. This is one case where I believe it's absolutely necessary because we need to get this work out. There's going to be more RFPs, more RFQs, and the ARPA funds are going to be no easy task. So I support this position wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Connors.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Good job.
Last but not least is HR and personnel. Okay, so basically the budget represents a 3.9% increase over 2022. The biggest item being an ordinance increase of 2.35% times 3 employees. And that's pretty much it. Are there any questions about that?
I think maybe Mr. Burney would be able to kind of expound upon that. I think it's worth explaining why that's happening.
Okay. Mr. Burney?
Well, the percentage increase in the wages is because 4 of the 6 people in my office are ordinance employees, and we revised their salary schedules with the Common Council a year and a half ago or so. So they are stepping through a wage progression, just like the unionized employees are. So that's why it's not a straight 2.35%. Some of the staff members will step up a step in the 10-year wage progression. And I think that accounts for the delta between the basic 2.35% and what we have on the piece of paper there.
Okay,
And we've also changed the bonus pool that we've starting to, the bonus pool will now not exist anymore. The ordinance employees will get regular and periodic raises rather than a bonus pool.
That's correct.
And I want to say thank you to Mr. Bernie. He is, well, Ray, you tell it.
Well, it may not seem this way, but I retired on January 1st, Mr. Mayor.
really?
And while we're waiting for somebody of his quality,
Yes.
which is very
No,
hard to find.
I will be leaving the city, but I'm working with Alicia on finding a replacement for me. So I'm not going anywhere other than fishing and golfing. So I can hang around a little bit longer to help find a replacement and smooth the transition.
And
Great.
I want to thank you for your service. You've been a tremendous asset to the city of Norwalk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bernie. So that concludes our departments, our department review tonight. I don't believe there's anyone else. The police has been moved to another date, I guess. And so that's it. Are there any comments?
Yeah, can I just ask, according to my notes, it seems like there's only one open item. That would be the outside counsel for the law office.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I have.
Okay, and then for the meeting on Monday, I will pull together a package of just those departments and get that out to you guys tomorrow. So you don't
Great.
have to go through the 42 pages.
Great, that'd be helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's
Right.
great.
Okay. Well, there's no motion to adjourn because this is not really a meeting, but thank you all for hanging out tonight, and we'll be back at it next week.
Thanks very much.
No
Have a
place,
good
no
weekend.
place I'd rather be.
Sure, that's not true, but okay. All
Have a
right.
good night.
Thanks.
Everybody.
Good night.